Today, we're going to dive into the story of a real trailblazer, someone who totally changed the game in American politics. We're talking about a man who broke these incredible barriers, not by shouting, but by patiently building bridges from the inside, always following his own conscience. This is the story of Senator Edward W. Brooke III. All right, let's just start right here with this quote because it gets to the very heart of who this man was. From the second he stepped onto the national stage, Brooke made it crystal clear. He was elected to represent all the people of Massachusetts. Now, he wasn't rejecting his identity, not at all. It was a complete reframing of his job. He was demanding to be judged on his skills and his ideas, a standard that, for a black man in America back then, was a powerful political statement all by itself. So you have to ask, where did this conviction come from, this drive to be a representative for everyone? Well, the answer is really in his early life, in a set of experiences that would forge his unique way of leading. Edward Brooke grew up in what he himself called a cocoon. He was raised in a stable, middle-class black neighborhood in Washington, D.C., went to the famous Dunbar High School and then Howard University. But that bubble, that relative protection from the worst of racism, was about to be completely shattered by what came next, serving his country in a segregated army. Think about the incredible contrast here. Overseas, Captain Brooke was a decorated hero in combat, literally risking his life for American democracy. But back home, on a U.S. Army base, he said that German prisoners of war were sometimes treated better than black American soldiers. Can you imagine? That injustice just lit a fire in him. He started defending black soldiers in military court. They even nicknamed him the soldier's lawyer, and it set him on a path to a legal career, to fight these battles from the inside. So that drive for justice, it pushed him straight into the political world, where he carved out a path that nobody could easily label. He decided to run as a Republican in Massachusetts, a state that was overwhelmingly Democratic. He was drawn to the party's ideas of self-help and fiscal responsibility, but he was determined to apply them with a strong social conscience. His rise wasn't some overnight success story. Not at all. It was slow and steady. After losing 2 early runs for the state legislature, he didn't quit. He took a job at the Boston Finance Commission, kind of a sleepy agency, and turned it into this powerhouse fighting corruption. That got him a reputation for being tough and honest, and he used that momentum to win a historic election in 1962, becoming the very first black state attorney general in American history. And this right here is a perfect example of the tightrope he was constantly walking. As Attorney General, civil rights groups planned a student boycott to protest segregation in Boston schools. Brooke ruled it was illegal. Talk about a risky move, right? It angered some in the civil rights community, but it was also brilliant because it showed the state's white majority that his loyalty was to the law first. It cemented his image as a leader of principle, not just a representative for one group. And this slide shows you exactly what that approach led to. In 1966, he did the unthinkable. In a state that was less than 3% black, overwhelmingly Catholic, and a Democratic stronghold, this Protestant African-American Republican won a seat in the United States Senate. It was a massive moment, making him the first black senator ever elected by popular vote in the history of the country. So he gets to Washington, right? And he doesn't just, fade into the background. Not a chance. He immediately starts carving out this unique role for himself as this moderate voice of reason and principle. And he often sided with his conscience over his party. And his impact? It was immediate and it was real. Look, he wasn't just there to be a symbol. No, he was there to work. He was a legislator through and through. And what you see here isn't just a list of laws. You can see a pattern. Fair housing, equal credit for women. Brooke consistently used his power to open doors and create economic opportunity for people who'd been shut out. One of his biggest, most lasting legacies is something called the Brooke Amendment. It was a simple idea, but absolutely revolutionary. It capped the rent for families in public housing at 25% of their income. Just a direct, practical law to make sure housing was affordable, and it's helped millions of low-income Americans for decades. But then came the ultimate test of his principles, the Watergate scandal. As a member of President Nixon's own party, the entire nation was watching to see, what's he going to do? Simple. He chose country over party. In a move that took incredible political courage, Edward Brooke became the very first Republican senator to publicly call for President Nixon to resign. He said Nixon had lost the confidence of the American people, and for the good of the country, he needed to step down. That move pretty much solidified his reputation as the conscience of the Senate. It's funny how things work. The the very same principles that defined his incredible rise were also tested during his fall. The final chapter of his public life is a complicated story. It's about challenge and ultimately about redemption. So in 1978, a really difficult and very public divorce, along with some related financial questions, just took a huge political toll. He lost his race for a third term in the Senate. Brooke himself would later say that this defeat was the single lowest point of his entire life. But you know how it is. Time has a way of putting things in perspective, of clarifying a person's real legacy. And his life of service wasn't forgotten, not by a long shot. By 2004, his reputation was firmly reestablished when he received the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I mean, that's a powerful statement from the nation, recognizing his huge contributions and his unwavering integrity.
And the awards didn't stop there. 5 years later, the very institution where he had served with so much distinction, the U.S. Congress, decided to give him another one of its highest honors, the Congressional Gold Medal. So you have these two incredible awards, and together, they just cemented his status. He wasn't just a politician anymore. He was a revered elder statesman who had truly managed to bridge the divide.
And I want to leave you with this final, really poignant thought from the man himself. Despite everything he accomplished, he felt that he could never fully escape being seen through the lens of race. His entire career was a fight to prove that a person could be judged on merit alone. And so the question he kind of leaves for all of us is, how much closer are we to fulfilling that vision today?